which is committed to transforming lives and businesses across Zambia through accessible, transparent, and responsible lending. Whereas our vision is to be a leading and responsible lender for sustainable growth. We have different types of loans that we offer. We have the SME loans. So these SME loans, these are loans given to businesses that are registered. And we have requirements that are needed to be submitted for businesses to access this service. We also have the loan product that we call the Anakazi, that is given to women who are in business. So we want to encourage women to have good, strong businesses with financially sound monies available. So we also have the MOU loans. So MOU loans, these are loans that are given to companies on behalf of, they sign on behalf of the employees. So we start giving loans to employees, and the deductions come in through payroll. And last but not the least, we have the civil servant loans that are given to civil servants. And the requirements for this is just the payslip, NRC, and 3 months bank statement. At the moment, we are only taking in physical loan applications, but very soon we'll start expanding and going in all provinces to just try and have everyone access our services. We're located along Longolongo Road. That's opposite Levy Junction. That's plot number 2397. That's where we are found in Lusaka. And our contact number is 0973 915564. So you're able to reach us on that number, or you can reach us on Facebook, on Instagram. We are also on LinkedIn. We also have a website where you're able to scroll in to just check out what we do, and all inquiries are responded to either on the platform, on social platforms, or on phone calls. All the queries are attended to there. I don't know if there are any questions up to that point. Okay, having said that, we welcome you all to our digital presentation that is going to be, Mr. David's going to take us through. Mr. David, please take it up.
Hi, Sipo. Thank you very much. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
All right. Please also confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, we're able to see your screen.
All right, fantastic. So we're just gonna, like Sipo said, we're just gonna proceed, and then as anybody joins the call, they'll be able to find us. Thank you, Teresa, for joining the call. I think since it's just you so far, I'd like to know maybe a bit about you. Do you do business? Why did you join the webinar?
All right. Hi, everyone. So my name is Teresa Chisanga. I am a marketer by profession. I'm interning at a startup company. So I'm trying to learn how to do the digital marketing part. The fact that it's a small company, how to brand it, how to advertise. So when I was scrolling through Instagram last night, and then I saw the ad, and I was like, maybe I can learn 1 or 2 things.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for joining.
All right.
So hopefully you've learned 1 or 2 things. After the webinar, the video will be available, and the slides will be available as well. So you can always watch it and refresh your memory. So let me just get into it. So the topic of today's webinar, this is our second webinar in the series. The first one was the finance for non-finance managers. The second one is digital first, how to compete and win online as a local SME. So whether you're a startup, whether you are a solopreneur, whether you're just somebody that is selling out of their bedroom, out of their garage, or wherever it is that you're selling from, or you're a consultant, we've designed this particular masterclass to be as detailed and as comprehensive as possible. So my fear is that we might not be able to cover everything, but we'll try as much as possible to cover what we can. So like Sipo said, my name is David. Um, my background really is tech, right? So I've evolved and I've moved from actual coding, software application development, website development to UI UX, product management, um, you know, branding. So basically, we've been through the entire value chain in terms of, when you look at um, user experience, right, from the beginning of the process to the end of the process. And what we're hoping to achieve today, we have a few things I would love to cover. The first one, basically, like you had said, Teresa, is about brand, right? Because that's really where everything starts from. So how do we build brands that stand out online? How do we choose which platforms to be on, especially in a world where there are so many platforms, and it seems like there's a platform that is coming up every other day, especially now that you have artificial intelligence that is reducing development time. How do we create content that resonate with your different audience, right? Whatever that audience group looks like. How do we drive engagement and trust? How do you set yourself up for success on Google, right? So we'll look at that in terms of search engine optimization and also in terms of Google My Business. I think those are kind of like the basic or the foundation level stuff. And then would also look at, if you need to hire somebody, when should you be considering hiring someone? What should you be looking out for if you're hiring somebody who is in digital marketing? Right. So let's look at the components of digital marketing. There are a few things. So I'd want to just differentiate, digital marketing from every other form of marketing, because we have, different forms of marketing. But today we're just focusing on digital. So we're not looking so much as the traditional forms of marketing that a lot of us grew up, interacting with or engaging with. Uh, Digital marketing at its core, it's basically using or leveraging the internet and the online platforms to promote your business or attract customers, right? So as opposed to, what we call the offline world, right? So your TVs, your radios, your newspapers, the kind of things that we call above and below the fold marketing. Um, Digital marketing is a little bit different, right? Because it relies exclusively on the internet and really, you as a business person, as a marketer, as an SME, finding the right mix for your digital marketing. So I've broken it down into components, just like umbrella terms, in terms of when you hear digital marketing, what should come to mind. So you have your social media marketing, which is your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok. Unfortunately, a lot of marketers and a lot of CEOs, business people think that digital marketing is social media marketing. Unfortunately, it's not the case because social media marketing is just a percentage of digital marketing. And then you have the brand identity, you have the search engine optimization or search engine marketing. You have your email marketing, you have your content marketing, and then you have these little boxes here, the analytics and the website. So I just put those in little boxes because they might not be as pronounced as these other ones, but they're equally as important as well. So when you think of digital marketing, either as a marketer or as a business person or as an SME that is running a business, you must be playing in one or two or three or multiple of these different spaces for you to really be effective, right? So we would focus as we go across multiple of a few of these components, and then we'll see how it comes together. So going to the next slide, so it says basically some dogs can't be taught new tricks, right? I'm sure we've heard that saying before. Even though I have this previous slide that shows us the components of digital marketing, I think from my experience, I remember while I was working in Lagos, somewhere in Nigeria, I was working for a company and we were in the oil and gas space, right? And at that time, I was brought in to do digital content marketing. I think that was my job description. And, it was fantastic because, obviously you're thinking, wow, everybody loves the internet. The internet penetration in Nigeria is really big. Um, and, it just felt like it was going to be a walk in the park. Unfortunately, I discovered this saying that some dogs can't be taught new tricks, because in as much as you want to use your social media, your email marketing, your content marketing, the goal of every marketing activity is to convert, right? Whatever conversion looks like. So whether it's sales, whether it's awareness, whether it's engagement, whether it's, just building the brand and brand visibility. Um, I discovered that there are some times when digital marketing doesn't work. So for example, the example I gave of the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, um, the key decision makers, the people that you want to get in front of, the people that would sign those contracts, they don't spend time on the internet, right? Or they don't spend time on the internet the way a 16 or 17 and 18-year-old person would spend time on TikTok, right? So the mix, therefore, at that time could not rely just on the digital marketing. It had to be a mix of both digital marketing and the more traditional, going to an event, doing some billboards, doing some corporate brochures, and visiting the office, and just doing good old traditional marketing, right? So I felt it was important to mention this here, so that we should not think that, oh, if you're able to crack the digital marketing equation, then you are 100% guaranteed for success. I think that the important thing is really balancing both of them and making sure that what the advantage that digital marketing would give you, you're not leaving it on the table because you're focused on the offline marketing activity, and you are not, overly focused on the digital marketing activities and leaving the offline activities that you're doing. Right. So I think it's important for us to always remember that, as people that are trying to, maximize digital marketing. Right. So let's really dig into it. So why digital? Right. Why am I saying digital marketing? Why am I saying digital first? This webinar is obviously focused largely on the Zambian customer and the Zambian audience. At the core of digital marketing, right? Post-COVID, even pre-COVID, um, we knew that digital was the new normal, right? Given the pace at which, internet penetration is increasing, the number of people with smartphones, the way that there's 5G technology now, and obviously the generative artificial intelligence that is coming up. So if you look at the Zambian context, at least 4.3 million internet users are accounted for across the whole of Zambia, which is a very good percentage, right? It's very above 20%, right, or close to 20%. And of that figure, 80% of them use the internet actively on social media, right? Even though the distribution it varies greatly. So if you look at the chart over here, right, the pie chart, you can see Facebook as the lion's share, and then you have, surprisingly, Pinterest, right? I know a lot of people that have Pinterest accounts, but they use it for DIY stuff, right? So DIY stuff in terms of, oh, you want to make a piece of furniture in your house, or how do you combine clothes, or how do you arrange the curtains, right? So it was very interesting to actually see this information in terms of, the fact that Pinterest is the second most used internet platform in Zambia, followed by, of course, the regular corporate Instagram, X or Twitter, YouTube, and then LinkedIn comes in at about 1.6%. Right, so that just gives you an idea, right, in terms of, when you're thinking about digital marketing, where are people spending the most time, right, and for what reasons are people spending those times on those platforms, right? We'll look deeper into them as we go on. But why is digital first, or why is digital become so important? Like I said, it's become the new normal, right? The second thing is the accessibility factor, right? So you're not really constrained. If I put a billboard, along Kabelenga Road, for example, or along Cairo Road, if you do not visit Cairo Road, obviously you don't see my product. Even if you were to pass through Cairo Road, there is no guarantee that you're going to look up to see the billboard, right? Given the sheer number of billboards that are along that road. The second thing, or the third thing, is affordability, right? The amount of money will cost you to get just a decent, lamppost ad along Cairo Road will probably be your marketing budget with digital marketing for maybe 2-3 months, right? Depending on the exact location along Cairo Road. right? So affordability is a very big factor, especially if you're a small team or if you have a lean budget and you cannot go crazy on, on spending, right? The fourth point there is measurability, right? So the ability to track what works and what doesn't work. And I think this is one of the big benefits of digital and digital first. In the sense that the same example I gave of the billboard along Cairo Road, for example, yes, you might be able to estimate, right, how many people actually, pass Cairo Road on a daily basis. Obviously, you cannot really estimate how many people end up seeing your billboard. I think the only way you can do that is how many people actually pick up their phone to give you a call or visit your website or, patronize your business, right? But with digital, it makes it a lot more easier because you're able to really dig down, whether it's impressions, whether it's your engagement metrics, whether it's the actual conversion to sales and to actual kwacha and ungwe. And then the last point there, your opportunity, right? So the crux of everything that we're saying, as far as digital first is concerned, is you're not just existing, right, online, right? Digital is made it a very playing field where whether you have a budget of, obviously that matters, that really matters, right? If you have a budget of 1 million kwacha, for example, to spend, versus somebody that has 10,000 kwacha to spend on a monthly basis. But again, from experience, I can tell you that, look, it really doesn't matter in terms of the budget. I worked with a company, again, in Nigeria. They are a fintech company, and I think they spent almost $1 million, right, on ads, right? And what they were spending the money on was $1 million on influencer marketing, right? So they spent so much on influencer marketing and so much on giveaway. And yes, they actually got a ton of downloads in terms of, the app and in terms of sign up. But at the end of 2, 3 years, when they looked at how many people actually did transactions on the app, right, and how many of them actually opened the app more than one time or two times, um, it was really, really disappointing, right? So they had to basically just kill off that entire campaign because, as far as they're concerned, you spent 1 million, but you can't really trace it to actual dollar that you're getting in terms of return on investment. So the initial hype, right, of, oh, we have this big budget, and we got like a bunch of downloads, a bunch of visits on the website. Yeah, that's what we kind of call like the vanity metrics. But when you start looking at, how many of that actually converted to, purchase and repeat purchase and evangelist for your product or for your service, even if you're able to do that with a 10,000 kwacha or a 1,000 kwacha budget, I think that's really where the value would be for you as a marketing person who's trying to leverage digital, right? Okay, let's move quickly. What do we have next? Right, so building a brand that stands out online, right? So I think that's the first place that we should start in terms of building up on this. So we've talked about the mix, right, in terms of when we're looking at social media purely, and we've talked about why the digital is important, right? And I'm saying, I believe the first place to start, right, whether you are you just got a new idea, whether you're just registering at Pakra, whether you've been in the business for a while, and you're just thinking of, okay, how can I make my business better? Or how can I really stand out online? I think it always goes back to the branding, right? So what is a brand, right? I'm sure everybody has a definition of a brand. I think Teresa has a brand. I have my brand. Sipo has a brand. It's basically the perception that people have of you, right? Or other people have of you. Now, in this case, we're talking about a brand, right? What is the perception that they have about your business, your product, your company, that is formed through various interactions across the different touch points that you have. So, for example, if you have a website, if you have a Facebook page, Instagram page, LinkedIn page, you have your physical office, right? The way that people perceive that brand every time they engage with not just you as the marketing person, not just your website that is beautiful and colorful, but everybody from the cleaner to the security guard to the receptionist to your CEO, right? All of that goes into really creating and building that brand, right? So that's the first thing that I think I'd want us to get across. So it is not your logo, right, as well, because I know that I've read a lot of that. For some of the clients that we've worked with, through the years, every time they talk about, oh, brand, right, they say, oh, here's my logo, right? So yes, your logo is important, but it's not the sum total of your brand. is a very small part of the very small part of the actual brand that you're trying to build, right? So the crux of the point of what I'm trying to get across really in this slide is that, look, even though you have been in business for a while, even though you might just be starting, even though all you have is just an idea, the foundation of your success or lack of it online goes back to your brand. Now, in terms of thinking through your brand, right, especially now that there's so many businesses and competitors that are vying for the same eyeballs and for the same space on the internet, um, you must be very clear around certain things, right? So your brand identity, your unique selling proposition, right? It must be very strong such that it can cut through all the noise that other brands might be making. Brands that probably have a better um, marketing budget than you might have, right? So the key questions that you must ask yourself at this stage, obviously, would be who you are, right? So your vision, your mission, your values. I'm sure for Teresa startup, for example, they probably have all of those already figured out. But it's always good to make sure that those are well thought through, and it's something that can easily resonate with the people that you said, okay, these are customer segments. The next one is what makes you unique, right? What's your differentiator? What's your story? I found, through the years that the most powerful kind of brands are the ones that have a relatable story. I was watching a podcast recently, and the gentleman of the podcast was talking about how most times we try and build products or we try and market products without looking at the culture of the people that we're trying to market it to. I'll take two examples. If you look at the way mobile money is here in Zambia, very rarely do you see people, if you go to a store, for example, obviously there are those that go with their card and pay with their card, but majority of them either go with cash or, if mobile money is available, they will definitely do mobile money. If you go to, West Africa, there is no mobile money penetration the way it is here in Zambia, right? So if you're going to build a mobile money product over there, it's going to be very difficult for it to scale. But if you're going to build a fully card-based business here, right, the number of people that you probably get as your customer are probably going to be people that pay for Netflix or shop on Amazon or swipe when they go to the supermarket, right? So it's very good to understand the culture, even as you're thinking about, what your brand is going to be like. So the next one is who's your ideal customer? I think this is very important, and a lot of times we try to, build products in first of all, and then we try and look for the customers afterwards. There's something called pull and push factor. If you check the Divisha website, there's a blog that we have on that that kind of like explains, how that works in terms of the psychology of a customer. So I think that will be a useful read for anybody that wants to learn more on that. So the next one is your brand identity. So your logo actually falls into this category of your brand identity. Your visual identity, your logo, your color, your typography. A few years ago, I learned that there was a reason why Facebook chose a blue to be their color, right? Way back in 2006, the internet was still very, in terms of grassroots internet usage, it was still very small. Right now, everybody's using blue, but for Facebook, it was more about building trust, right? And you know, blue was synonymous with trust. That's why they went with Facebook blue, all right? So everything that you're thinking about in terms of your brand identity must speak to the kind of brand that you want to build. If you're a feminine brand, for example, your typography and your font family should fit, that particular brand, feminine brand that you're building, and so on and so forth. And then the last key question there that you must ask yourself is, what kind of message am I trying to communicate and how am I communicating that message? So what's my brand tone? Is it friendly? Is it playful? Is it professional? Is it serious? Right? What is my brand voice? Right? All of these must be really thought through and documented so that if, let's say, David is the social media manager or the digital marketing person, if he leaves tomorrow, the next person that comes in doesn't bring in their own brand identity, right, or their own brand tone, right? There's a consistent, documented style, right, that you use within that organization, right? So in terms of building a brand that stands out online, these questions must always be at the back of your mind. And even if you have already, figured out a lot of these things, it's also important as well to always come back and do like a review, right? I know a few businesses that do their reviews after every 3 years, after every 5 years, because your customers are always changing, right? They're never static, so they're always changing. So it means that your brand also must evolve with the needs of those customers as well. Moving on to the next slide. So we've talked about the brand, right? We've talked about the kind of brand that you want, right, or that you want to build for your business. But I think an even more important question that informs your brand tone, your brand voice, your identity, your vision, mission, really is the brand purpose, right? So why is this business in existence, right? So whether you're a digital marketing person, whether you're the social media manager, whether you're the CEO, right? The purpose of the business must be clear cut across board, so that everything that everybody is doing is going in the direction of the purpose, because the purpose is what your customers would ultimately buy into, right? If I do not relate to the purpose, if I do not feel a personal emotional connection with that purpose of the business, right, then there's really no nothing is keeping me grounded, right, as far as being loyal to your business is concerned, right? I know businesses that might offer their product at a premium, right, like iPhone, for example, or Apple, right? They offer their product at a premium, but people are still able to buy that and pay for it, regardless of the fact that it's just rinse and repeat every single year, because they align themselves with the purpose of Apple, right? So when you're thinking through the question of purpose, there are four main questions that you must ask yourself. And this, I didn't come up with this. This has been in existence for a very long time. Harvard Business Review, I've carried this, I've talked about this several times as well. But you must ask yourself four key questions, right? So what do we love to do as a company, right, or as an individual? What does the market need, right? What are we good at, right? So what capacities do we have, and then what can we be paid for? So you can have this three, 1, 2, 3, and then you don't have this answer. Then at the end of the day, you're just social enterprise or an NGO, right? If you're not making money from it, but you must be able to answer and actually articulate all of these four boxes and four questions. And then when you do, you can then walk backwards in terms of coming up with, okay, this is our mission statement, this is our value statement, and so on and so forth. All this, the particular template to help you to create your brand purpose is also hosted on the DiviShare platform. We have our resource hub. I'll share information about that after the webinar. Moving on, we just have a little, table here, brand persona examples. We've talked a lot about branding, right? But I thought to put it into context, you can see here, if I was to, be running a consulting outfit or a cleaning company or a tech firm, right, I would want to have a certain personality, right? It's the way that you'd say, oh, this person is an introvert, this person is an extrovert. There's a way that there are certain characteristics that you associate with such people. There must be characteristics that they associate with your brand as well, right? There must be certain voices and certain tones that you associate with your brand. I remember I was consulting for a lady who's based in Canada some time back, and at the end of the brand audit that we had done for her, we had a section of do's and don'ts, right? So do's are the words and keywords that our social media team were allowed to use online, and then don'ts are words that they were not allowed to use. A word like I don't know, right? So if a customer sends you a message, you do not respond to them, or I don't know, right? You'd rather say something along the line of, can I please share your number? I'll give you a call, because that buys you a bit of time to actually be able to, do your findings and then communicate to them properly, right? So like I said, all of that needs to be documented, because you're building a brand and your brand must have a persona. So you're looking at your personality, you're looking at your voice, you're looking at your tone. So in terms of tone, you can see a few options there. If you're a cleaning company, you'd want to be cautious. You'd want to be, you want to come across as energetic. So it means that even your brand color also has to be, it cannot be a pastel, right? Because a pastel is a cool, dull color, right? But you want something that is very energetic, very vibrant, that stands out, right? You want to be perceived as, if you're a consultant, you want to be perceived as, professional, formal, educational. So when you understand your tone and you understand your voice and your personality, it ultimately would inform the kind of content that you also put out, because your content then has to align with your brand and your voice and so on and so forth. Um, and then when it comes to choosing the right platform for your business, we're really now moving into like the crux of the webinar. There are a few things, right? You can't be everywhere. That's number one. I think, especially if you're a startup, you're just starting out, it's really key if the people that you are. I gave an example at the beginning of the talk, about the oil and gas space, that I was working on, the oil and gas company I was working on, working with in Lagos. We discovered that, the CEOs, the MDs, the people that would make decisions to give us those jobs and those contracts, they were not on Instagram. They were not on Facebook. Some of them were on LinkedIn. A lot of them were on WhatsApp communities, right? So our job was to find out, okay, which WhatsApp communities are they on? How can we get somebody to add us to those WhatsApp communities? And when we unlocked that, we unlocked a very huge value for the company, because now we knew where those key decisions makers were. We knew where we needed to put our information, and we knew the kind of things that was going to be of interest to them, rather than just putting, oh, we have Facebook, we have Instagram. It's nice to have all of those platforms, but remember what we said, the key is really not to be everywhere. The key is really to be very effective with whichever platforms that you are. So I'd rather you are on Facebook alone and you're contributing 30%, right, to the revenue at the end of the year, right, as opposed to being on 10 different platforms and you cannot scratch 1% of the total revenue, together. All right. Okay, so this, when we share the slide, you can please just take a look at it. Because of time, I'll move to the next slide. So how do we choose the social media platform to be on? The first thing really comes down to knowing your audience. Remember, we talked about those 5 questions. We said you must know your customer. It really comes down to knowing your audience, so knowing the demography of your audience. When you're setting up a Facebook ad, for those of us on the call that have set up Facebook ad, Facebook would ask you for the age that you want to target, or the demography, or their interest. There's a temptation sometimes to, put a ton of options, right? But you find that, you end up reaching out to a ton of people and you're not really converting at the end of the day. But if you really understand the demography of your business, you understand the demography of who we are targeting, what is their age, what is their gender, what is their pain point. So Divishay, for example, we do loans. We know the loan products that would gravitate more towards women and those that would gravitate towards men. So when I'm setting up a Facebook ad, we know, okay, this particular flyer, this particular messaging, but we're even setting up if it's $10, if it's $5, if it's $20, we're targeting the men demographic only, or the female demographic only. Right. The other thing that is important to know is the pain points, right? What is their needs versus what is their wants, right? This is where your buyer persona comes in, right? So you must be able to understand. We also have a template for a buyer persona on the website as well. Basically saying, okay, if there is a Mr. Mullinga somewhere who's this year, who's this age, who's married, he does this job. So you basically build out your ideal customer, right? Obviously with a lot of assumptions, but the reason why you're building out those personas is because you want to be able to have a basis of whatever it is you're doing in terms of marketing. And then as you get to know your customer better, you continue to fine tune those personas to the point where you really know your customer. And if they wake you up at the middle of the night to say, oh, we are running an ad, you are going to run a spot on ad because you know who the customer is, right? So the demographic is important. Assessing the strengths and weaknesses of each platform. So you're looking at the features, right? If what you're interested in is, let's say posting GIFs, for example, then Instagram and Facebook is not the platform for you because they do not organically support, the GIFs. If you're setting up GIFs and then exporting it and uploading it back there, you'd also want to look at the best use cases for your user base as well. The other thing that you want to look at is what is your objective, and I think I probably should have even put this on top because I think this is the most important thing, and I started with this as well. what is the primary objective of your business, of your particular campaign that you're doing at that particular time? Is it to increase brand awareness? Or if you want to increase brand awareness, you would not go to LinkedIn where it's like 1.5, 1.6% of the internet usage in Zambia. You probably want to go to a Facebook because then that gives you a lot more eyeball, right, and a lot more visibility. Um, is it something that is a niche product? So are you building like a game, for example? Then you want to look at, okay, where's the gamers community, right? Facebook probably won't be the place that you go to. You probably want to go to a Reddit, for example. Um, if you do furniture, you probably want to do Facebook, Instagram, and maybe Pinterest, right? Because that's really where people go and search for those kind of things. So it is very important that your objective is very, very clear. The moment you identify that, okay, we need to embark on a marketing activity. And then the other thing that you must consider to be able to really get the best and choose the best platform is your content type, right? Different platforms are suited for different content. So if you're looking at a long form, if you're looking at a long form, if you're looking at a long form kind of content, for example, you don't want to use Instagram, right? If your post or your content is very heavy on links, Instagram doesn't have the ability to allow you to click a link within the copy of the text. So you're probably looking at maybe a blog, maybe a Medium, maybe a Facebook post. But it's very, very important that the content type is considered when you're choosing the kind of platform that you want to use. And I think the last point there, which is very important as well, is the resource allocation. The amount of money it would take you to run an ad on LinkedIn, you'll probably use it for 3 months on Facebook, right? Because LinkedIn is a lot more expensive for ad resources, right? So if you're looking at in terms of affordability, I would say maybe Meta, which is Facebook, Instagram. Then you're looking at, even Reddit is it's even cheaper. But LinkedIn, in terms of if I'm to rank them, I'll put LinkedIn at the very end. But if your primary objective, right, is to increase brand awareness with the group of people that the professionals, the CEOs, the MDs, and so on and so forth, then you might as well bite that bullet and just focus on LinkedIn. Remember what we've said, we don't want to spread ourselves too thin because the goal is to convert, right? And, not really to have 10 social media platforms and you're not making any money or increasing any brand awareness across those 10 platforms. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So this slide just looks at, the different type of contents and where they fit. I'm not going to take a bit of time here because, like I said, the video and the slides will be available for us after the masterclass. Let's go to the next slide. So I want us to look quickly at your content, all right? And this is something that I think for a lot of marketing people, I've seen a lot of marketing people and solopreneurs and business people that create content really struggle. Creating content is hard. It's one of the hardest things that you can do because you have to create content that is relevant, right? You have to create content that would resonate with your audience, right? Content that is share worthy, right? I would want to create a content that if I create a piece of content, I want Teresa to share it. I want this person to share it and that person to share it because that is how other people in their network begin to then discover my brand, right? So it takes a bit of time and it takes a bit of energy and effort. Now, I think a good way to think about content is, number one, what are my content pillars, right? So your content pillars are just like, if you think of a physical house, a story building that has pillars. So the pillars are what hold up your social media account and your content strategy, right? So for a lot of brands, I'm sure there are some brands that you've seen that, you can tell just by looking at their Instagram or Facebook, you can tell what their content pillars are. The typical content pillars that you have are basically, educational content, promotional content, behind the scenes, but content are your themes, right? Themes that you say, okay, on Monday, we're going to be talking about product content. On Tuesday, we're going to be talking about education content. On Wednesday, we're going to be talking about, inspirational content and so on and so forth. It makes it easier as well for you as a digital marketer to really, create like a proper content calendar because you can predict what you're going to create on what day, right? So I think if you're thinking about leveraging content marketing as a strategy, it is really important for you to think of, okay, what are my content pillars? as a rule of thumb, you want to keep it to max 5 content pillars, right? You don't want to spread yourself too thin, but you want to make sure that your content pillars are interesting enough, and you can always find, the creativity and the juice to really be able to create content across those different pillars. So you can see on the screen here, I have, just a sample, right, in terms of some content pillars, and then the content ideas that would fall into those content pillars. So let's say, for DVShare, our content pillar, one of them is to educate. Then it means that we have to put out a lot of tutorials, a lot of webinars like this one, a lot of, how-to guides, white papers, FAQs, right? We take this pillar so seriously that we've built our own resource library because, in our own brand value chain, we want to make sure that our SMEs and the people that take Anakazi loans and the civil servants, they don't just see us as their financial partner, right? They see us as their business partner, as a partner that wants to make sure that they are succeeding, not just collecting money, but actually able to, turn that money into profit because we are giving them the information that helps them to do that, right? Whether it's business plan, whether it's cost analysis calculator, and so on and so forth. Right. So the crux of what we're saying here, if you're really serious about digital marketing, you must be serious about, your content pillars and really thinking through what your content pillars are going to be. Here I've put just a snapshot of a content distribution channel. What this is really is, we talk about Facebook, LinkedIn, all the social media channels, but I think sometimes we also forget that that is not all the channels that is available. So I would like to break them down into kind of like 3 broad categories, right? So there's your paid channel, which is the one on the top right, on the top left, sorry. So you have your paid channels, which is your pay-per-clicks, your Facebook ad, LinkedIn ad, your sponsored content, your paid influencers. So paid channels are the ones that you pay people for. Your end channels, right? If I have a Facebook page, on the DVShare page, for example, we put a piece of content and somebody likes it, somebody shares it, somebody retweets it, somebody shares it with their friends on WhatsApp, right? All that is earned, right? So we started the work, and then, our audience, rewarded us for good content, right? And then you have the last one here, which is owned channel. So your website, your blog, the social media that you built over time, your email newsletter, and your mailing list that you've worked on over the past couple of months. The important thing here, especially when starting out and for small businesses like Teresa's startup, right, is you want to focus on your own channel and your end channel before you start looking at your paid channel. When you look at this, it reminds me of paid traffic and organic traffic, right? Very early in digital marketing journey, we learned that you should always focus on your organic traffic because it would never fail you, right? As opposed to focusing so much on your paid traffic. It's similar to the example that I gave of the business that spent $1 million, got a bunch of downloads, but did not get like actual purchases or repeat customers, right? Versus the one that spent 10,000 kwacha, but really doubled down on quality, on building trust, on building relationship, and so on and so forth. So let's focus, if we are really using digital, let's focus on building out our own channel, knowing where to build out our own channels as well before we then start. So if we're able to do channels, posting the right content, thinking about the right strategies, then that gives us the end channel, because now we're looking at people that or followers and people that have liked our page that feel like, oh wow, I would love to share this with my colleague or with my father or with my mother or with my neighbor or whoever it is, and then we can then use that and go to the paid channel, which just helps us to amplify whatever it is that is working across the end channel and the own channel. Okay, I hope that makes sense in a certain way. So earlier on, I talked about the social media calendar. So this is a snapshot of one of I think this was March the 3rd to the 8th at Division, right? So I just screen grab this just to show us what that looks like. So what we do is on a Sunday when the work at the office is not so crazy. We sit down, we've done our research, we come up with the content, we design what we need to design, and we just schedule that, right? It doesn't mean that during the week, you're not going to get fresh inspiration and say, oh, I want to put out this piece of content. It just means that you're giving yourself enough time, right, to be able to, to be able to think through, to be able to do some research, and then just schedule whatever it is that you need to schedule, so that, you're not panicking and you're not rushing to, meet deadlines, and then you end up, putting out content that nobody likes, nobody shares, and nobody wants to engage with, right? So let's move on. Rule of thumb: 80% value, 20% sales. What this basically means is when you look at your page, right? If I go back here, for example, right, when you look at your page, you don't want to always be pitching, right? Your social media is not an investor deck, or it's not a pitch deck, right? Or it's not a platform where you dump like pitching materials for your customers. No, right? They want things that, you see, if they begin to feel like, okay, I can trust you, I know that you'll give me resources like this masterclass. It's totally free, right? I'm hoping that we're getting some value, but it's to ensure that we are helping you as the person that's following us on our social media posts to realize that, okay, it's not about getting a loan from DVShare every single time, right? It's about how does DVShare make your business better? How does DVShare help you to thrive, right? That is the thing that every marketing person needs to be able to communicate, the value, right, that you might get. It's not everybody that, in our case, would want to borrow loan, right, immediately, right? But if they trust you, it means that, you have that mind share. At the moment they need to borrow money, right, because they know that, okay, I can count on DVShare. DVShare, I've learned so much from DVShare. DVShare gave me a template that I used, and it helped my business to save X amount of money because we're able to budget. All of that comes together, right? So again, it's really about making sure that you are creating value in your content, and then the other time you can use it to sell. Remember what I said, there's the pull and the push factor, right? There's a point where you're pushing stuff to your customers, and then there's a point where they begin to pull your content and your value towards them. I think that's where we really want to get to at the end of the day. Okay, so actionable tips for a balanced mix. I already talked about some of these: knowing your audience, varying your format, knowing where you should use a short video, where you should use user-generated content, knowing where an infographic post is relevant. Um, you know, if you're focusing on emails, your newsletters and so on and so forth. And obviously, I think one of the biggest ones is the need for consistency, right? So whether it's consistency in your tone, whether it's consistency in your voice, whether it's consistency in your content pillars, right? I love how you know if my audience know that, okay, on Tuesday this is what I'm going to get from DVShare, and on Thursday this is what I'm going to get from DVShare, and so on and so forth. I think all of that just creates a bit of trust and removes any element of surprises. It doesn't mean that you're not creating very rich content or very valuable content. It's just that they know what they are getting per time, right? So I think that's very important to also keep in mind. So let's move on to SEO, because I'm looking at my time. I think I have just less than 15, 20 minutes to go. But let's look at SEO quickly. So what is SEO, right? So we've been talking about social media, we're talking about branding. But if you remember my initial slide, I showed us the different components of digital marketing, and search engine optimization is a key part of it. So whether you are a more traditional marketer, whether you are a social media person, whether you are a CEO and MD or whatever it is, it's also very important as well that you understand how this works. The goal of your social media, remember we looked at, let me go back to this slide, right? So we looked at these owned channels, right? There's a friend of mine who, it seems like for some reason, I don't know why, but it seems like Instagram just has it out for her. Every time she creates an Instagram page, they block it, right? And unfortunately, Instagram doesn't give you the reason why they're blocking it, but they just keep blocking the page. And Facebook also does that sometimes as well. But you see, unfortunately, she doesn't have control over that because it's not a platform, right? It's a third-party platform that she's leveraging, right? But when I say search engine optimization, right? And I'm saying it helps you to really focus, right? Because if you have your social media, you have your Facebook that has hundreds of thousands of followers, what you want to do ultimately is you want to drive traffic to your own channel, right? And to the platform that you have control over, right? So on your website, like on the DiviShare website, for example, like I said, we have the resource center, our about us pages there. The kind of details that we cannot put on Facebook is on our website. So ultimately, that is our landing page. Everything that we do, we're taking traffic there, right? So your search engine optimization is basically the strategies and the practices that you put in place to help you to improve your online visibility, right? Your online visibility on search engines, whether it's Google or whether it's Bing, or in this case, even ChatGPT as well, right? So SEO is basically about helping your website or your business show up when people search for products or services that you offer. I didn't say that they search for you, they search for products or services that you offer, and it pops up, right? There was a time when I searched for a gym in Lusaka, right? And Google gave me a query in return, and it just showed me gyms near me, and it gave me a list of gyms with the distance from my current location, right? Now, for businesses that have been able to tap into that, I mean, by the time I scroll to the first, second, third, fourth, fifth gym, I've already made a decision, right? I'm not going to go to the next page or gym number 7, number 8, number 9, number 10, because I don't have the time for that. And I just assume, like every other person would assume, that the ones that come up on top are the ones that Google trusts. And because I trust Google, I automatically go with that business, right? So SEO is very important. Why is it important for a local business? The first thing, like I said, over 85% of users never scroll past the first page of Google, right? So that's why businesses pay a ton of money to appear on that page, right, of Google. I don't know how many people on this call have never scrolled down and then clicked on the second page and the third page and the fourth page. It doesn't cross our minds to do that, right? And then SEO is free traffic. Why pay for it when you can get it for free? Right. So SEO is free traffic, no ad spend required. Um, Once you're ranking well, right? But there are a ton of things that you need to do for you to be able to get to the point where you're ranking properly, and we'll look at that. And then the last thing that SEO does and why it really matters is that it builds trust. Like I said a few minutes ago, even when I search for something on Google, most times Google would give you the very first result, right? A sponsored result. Most times I don't click on that sponsored result because I feel like, okay, they've paid to be there, right? But if you can be organically, in number 1, number 2, number 3 position on the results that Google is giving, then I think you've done a fantastic job for your brand. And I think that's kind of like the journey that we are on. Now, talking about SEO, there are 3 types of SEO that you should know. The first one is the local SEO. So local SEO is the one that is associated with Google Maps, for example, right? So it's focused on getting your business to show up in the local search result and on Google Maps. This is very simple to set up in terms of if you set up your Google My Business, right, you're halfway there. Once you verify your Google My Business profile, and you put your pictures, you put all the different information that you need to put there, you ensure that your location, your accurate location is on Google Maps. As far as local SEO is concerned, you are 95% there. The second one is the on-page SEO. Now, the on-page SEO only affects people that have a website. If you don't have a website, you don't need on-page SEO or even off-page SEO. But what on-page SEO is how your website is optimized, right, for Google and for search. So do you, for example, if somebody visits your website, does it take 5 hours to load, right? A very small website, does it take so long to load? Do you have like links that are dead? They call them dead links, right? So if somebody clicks a link, for example, they expect that it will take them somewhere, right? But I've seen a lot of websites that have a lot of dead links, or they have like a contact us form that doesn't work. The question is, why put it there, right? You might think, oh, it doesn't matter, nobody's looking at it. But unfortunately, Google's bot is so smart, right, that it knows which ones are dead links, and it actually ranks websites based on dead links. Why is that important? Google doesn't want, because I mean, they're not the only search engine out there. If every time you use Google and Google gives you top 2 results and you click one, and on the website you can't do anything, you can't click any link, it makes you question the results that Google is giving you, right? So they are very, very strict on, those little things. So most times you'd have to talk to your developer or your web maintainer person to ensure that, your on-page SEO is really figured out, and is done properly. The other one, or the third one, the last one, is the off-page SEO. So these are things that is independent of your website, all right? So for example, we've been talking about social media. This is why social media is so important, especially if you have a website. When you create a blog on your website, it's always important that you post it on your Facebook, on your LinkedIn, or whichever social media you use. Because compared to your website, Google really, really, really ranks and rates Facebook, right? Because billions of people use Facebook. So as far as Google is concerned, Facebook is a very, very, you know, it's a very good authority, right? So if anybody is visiting your website from Facebook, as far as they are concerned, it's that, okay, there must be something good that is bringing somebody from a platform like Facebook to your website, right? So that relationship, therefore, between websites where there's a very good authority, they're called domain authorities, right? Where there's a very good authority to your website is really important. I don't know if anybody on the call is familiar with putting content of featured posts or featured articles on CNN or BBC. If you put your ad on any of these big domain names and any of these big news outlets, even the way that your website ranks, right, on SEO also increases as well, because Google is saying, okay, for you to be featured on a platform like BBC, it means that your business must be very legit, right? So it also bumps up your domain authority as well. So it's a very, very interesting thing that you should look into, right? If you're a marketing person, if you're a digital marketer, and you want to unlock the potential for your search engine optimization. So in terms of excelling with SEO, just beginning to wrap this up. Case study of fictitious business, right? Lusaka Cleaners. When they started out, if in an ideal world, probably started out with Facebook, no web presence, zero Google visibility. The expectation would be after 2 months, right, or after a few months of being in business, you've set up your Google profile, that's Google My Business profile, you've added your keywords, you've added your meta description, all of these under remember what we said of the on-page and off-page SEO. So you've added those meta tags, meta description, you've also given people links to give you reviews after you've provided the service for them. Slowly you begin to rank and you begin to show on the Google result, right? And obviously that then means that your what do you call this? Your booking also increases as well. If you give it a bit more time, right? If you go 5 months into the future, right now they've built a website that is responsive. They have a blog where they're putting out like useful content that people actually want to read. They've been featured in a few, serious articles. Backlinks is linking back to their website, and they've integrated analytics to monitor what works, right, and what doesn't work. I was watching an interview, with, I think it was Stripe, one of the big payment companies in the world, and they had gone for a competition, and after that competition, because they got a lot of publicity, there was a serious spike, right, in terms of the number of people visiting their website. But after about a week, that kind of like died down because now nobody was talking about you anymore. Fortunately for the founders, they learned that, okay, when we have events like that where we are really in the news and people are talking about business, we need to put strategies in place to make sure that that doesn't die out. It's going to die out eventually, but you want to make sure that you're able to extend it as much as possible, right? So if you're going for an event, are you talking to attendees and participants in the event? Are you capturing video moments? Are you capturing reels? Content that you can use to drag, that publicity as much as possible, right? I think those then become very important when thinking about, really maximizing your search engine optimization. In terms of really excelling with SEO, there are a few things that you can do. There are a lot of free tools out there as well. I already talked about Google My Business. If your company or your brand is not on Google My Business, they are really leaving a lot of money and visibility on the table. The other thing that you want to constantly do as well is check your keywords. Check what keyword is my website ranking for, and what keyword is my competition website ranking for. You always want to check, right? Because at the end of the day, you are not being judged against yourself as far as the customer is concerned. The customer is judging you against the next person that is offering a similar service as you are, right? So you sometimes it might be a bitter pill to swallow, right? Because even for us, there are times when the when we do some of this analysis, we find that okay, maybe the competition is doing better, right? But if you are really serious about the business, it means that you have to look at what your competition is doing, what is working for them, what can you copy and amplify and do better than they are doing, right? So Uber Suggest and Answer the Public, those are two fantastic platforms. They have their free plans and then they have the paid plan as well. But you can start with the free one and then ultimately switch to the paid one or find any of the other free options that are on the internet. And then for your search engine optimization, just to make sure that it is really optimized. I personally like SEO Optimizer because it's free. But if you run your website with WordPress, you want to use Yoast SEO, which basically just helps you to fine tune your SEO strategy, gives you the meta keywords, description, the schemas, everything that you need to put to be able to run properly. The other thing that a lot of people don't do is your Google Search Console, right? It is not enough that you set up Google My Business. What you want is you want to set up Google Search Console so that you're able to see the trend over time. When are people searching for us on Google, right? Where am I ranking in those search results, right? When are people searching directly for my business? When are they searching for my competitor? And my business is also showing up in that query, right? So I think that is something that I've seen a lot of people don't do, either maybe because they don't know how to do it or they don't know it exists. But if you want to, really track your search engine performance, you need to set up Google Search Console and just monitor the different trends, right? And then obviously the last one there is the very famous ChatGPT or the alternative Gemini by Google, which can help you to do your keyword research and just generate like keywords that is not just now friendly to SEOs, but it's also friendly to chatbots as well. Because I'll tell you that is where we're going to in terms of marketing. A lot of people now don't go to SEO to brand. Yeah, we still do like the going to Google, but even I don't know if you've observed, but on Google now it doesn't just give you your query answers; it gives you like a summary, right? But those summaries that are generated by artificial intelligence are from websites, right? So it's very important to optimize and to prepare for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years in terms of what the future of search is going to be like. So this is just a screenshot again talking about this analytics. I did this today just to kind of like show you what that would look like if you were I use Gmetrics for this. This helps you to kind of like look at how your website is performing across different touch points, and then it gives you a score, right? So when it gives you that score, your work then would be to, even though I took a screenshot, if you use the actual platform, it gives you like a really detailed breakdown, right, in terms of what's working and what's not working, and it applies a score to each one. So I think it will be very useful for anybody that has a website, just to do this once a quarter or once every 2 months, so that you can fine tune what needs to be fine tuned and then ensure that your website is doing better than the next person. Like I said earlier, you know, we don't want to focus on the online and forget the offline. But we want to make sure that whatever marketing activities we're doing offline that is taking people online, they have a very good experience, right? Otherwise, you just spend money into the hole at the end of the day, right? Um, right. So last two key slides, consistency. So we said, it's important to be consistent, but what does consistency look like, right? We've talked about the need for your content pillars. We talked about the need for your calendar to schedule your post. Um, but there are a few other things that when you think of consistency, must always be at the back of your mind. So how often are you posting? And like I said, content is one of the most difficult things that you could potentially do, right? Because there are times when, the creative juices, you just have like a creativity block. There are times when, the content is just not vibing to you as the person that's creating it. So as far as you're concerned, it might actually not also vibe to your audience. But it's important to to have that discipline. So if you say, okay, I'm going to post 3 times a week, then do 3 times a week. If you say I'm going to post daily, then do daily. I've found that, daily is not always, especially if you're like a one-man digital marketing team or one-man social media team, it's not the most easy thing to do. So you might want to space it out, right? And just find a rhythm that works for you. The other thing, like we talked about, is your brand messaging and your brand tone. That consistency must be there, and it must reinforce the identity of your brand. And then we've also talked about engagement. Now, like I said earlier, the engagement factor is the real kicker, right? Let's not, there's a thing of wanting to be bogged down with the vanity metrics, right? But vanity metrics without actually converting to some, I mean, every business is in it to make profit, right? So if it's not converting to profit, it's a vanity metric, right? So we want to make sure that, whatever interactions, whatever posts we are putting out is not just getting impressions and views, but it's actually getting engagement, right? And I think even for us as Divishay, this is one of the things that we are always trying to evolve and always trying to do. What are people engaging with? What are people not engaging with? Let's dial back on the things that people are not engaging with, and dial with what people are engaging. And I think at this point as well, it is important to mention. Um, I've seen a lot of brands that jump on trends, right? So there are a lot of trends that might be happening on the internet that you want to jump on. And I always tell people it's not every trend that you jump on as a brand, as a business, as an SME, as a solopreneur, because some of these trends, are not intended for the kind of identity that you've been creating over the past 6, 7 months or 1, 2 years, right? There are certain trends that you should jump on, but there are certain trends that just pass it by, right? Because it's going to hurt your brand more than you would actually want to. And I think also one of the things I didn't put on the slide is the case of influencer marketing. I think that's something that it's like a wave, right? It just came to everybody's doing influencer marketing, from comedians to musicians to actual academics and whatnot. But I think that you also have to be very careful as well when it comes to influencer marketing, because it doesn't always convert. Number one, and also the exposure that it gives to your brand. If the influencer messes up or if their brand is affected, automatically the ripple effect falls on your brand as well. Right. So it's very, very careful to always look the long-term game. I'm not saying you should not use influencer marketing, but what I'm saying is that you should be very careful in terms of how you choose what influencers to work with. And the real question really should always be, in 4 months, 5 months, right? The people that I get from these influencers, am I still going to be keeping them? It's always easier and cheaper, right, to keep a client, right? We put a blog post on the Divishay blog a few weeks ago on the customer retention rate and how important it is, right? If you're able to unlock that, you are able to generate probably between 5 to 25 times the same value, right, from the customer you've retained, right, than trying to spend that same money to get the customer, to get a new customer, right? So customer retention then should become a very, very big thing. I don't think influencer marketing necessarily gives you that, right? So in terms of benefits of consistency, we've already said build audience expectation, improve algorithm, allow for data collection and optimization, and so on and so forth. And then, when you are, considering hiring, I think this is my last slide, or my second to the last slide. For those of us that are thinking of, okay, hiring, whether you're looking to hire a teammate or you're looking to hire somebody to take care of your social media or whatever the case might be, there is a time to hire, right? And you need to be very certain, right? Because I know a lot of people that, you want to hire, but you still want to be very hands-on, right? And you don't want to, um, leave that responsibility of your social media account or your company's social media account to the person you've hired, right? So I think that it is very important to be sure that, okay, now I can't do it myself anymore. I need somebody to come in with their expertise and take charge of this. If your business is growing, right, and you think that, okay, you need somebody to come in and really focus on that, or you just need a strategic push, so somebody that knows it better than you, to come in. And what are the things that you can expect, right, from, or what should you expect and demand from somebody if you're hiring them, right? Obviously, it all comes down to clear goals, right? You can't measure, what you're not tracking, or you can't track what you're not measuring, right? So it's always important that you set very clear goals. So, like I said, there must be some metrics that is hard and easy to measure. So we call them like smart objective, right? So is it leads? Okay, how many leads are you expecting in a month, right, or in a week, or in a quarter? Right? Is it sales? Right? Obviously, the difference between both of them. Is it brand awareness? Are you just interested in having like a bigger mind share, right, in the market, right? So being able to say, okay, this is where we currently are in terms of we did a survey of 100 people. This is how many people know about our brand versus by the end of Q3, we want to make sure that this is the number of people in a survey of 100 that actually know about our brand, right? And then you have your strategy and planning, so content calendar, platform strategy. And I think this is very important because most times when we hire people, we don't hire them based on, you know, yeah, it's good to know Facebook, it's good to know Instagram, but do you know the tools and the features that these guys are always rolling out every day? Or is the manager or the CEO going to have to hire, two, three, four other people to come and work with you, right? So being a person or someone that is well equipped, right, in terms of not just the strategy, but also the execution of those strategies as well, I think becomes a very big value add to whatever it is that you're doing. Obviously, we have the communication, regular updates, and the feedback loop, alignment with the brand. I think this is a very big one because, like I said earlier, you don't want to hire somebody that then comes with their own brand tone and their brand voice. If you're just starting out and you're just building it together, fantastic, build it together. But remember what we said in the beginning, you must have your brand guide. That is what is supposed to guide your style, your typography, your tone, your voice, your personality, every single thing that is associated with your brand. And I think the last point there that says below vanity metrics, I've already talked about that. You really want to focus on the real business outcomes. They're called vanity metrics because they're really nice on the eyes. And everybody likes to, talk about them. Oh, we have this 1,000 numbers of followers on our Facebook. Okay, well and good. But how many of those followers are actually, in your pipeline, right? Or considering to be in your pipeline, right? Yeah. So I think in a nutshell, that's basically what we wanted to discuss in the webinar. I would want to just open the floor. If you have any questions, if you have any thoughts and ideas that you'd like to share, you can please just unmute and we'd like to take those over the next 2-3 minutes so that we can call it a day.
Hi, David.
Hi there.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks. It was really good session. I learned a lot. I learned the importance of understanding languages of each social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, because I think at some point I just started like using the same content on each platform, which I think is not good. So I have to like study how each platform is, understand the audience, the language, the tone. Also planning content, it's important.
Right.
Yeah, creating value, not just jumping on any trend that's coming up and all that. So yeah, I'll definitely
Yeah.
start planning my contents now, reading through the audience.
Right.
And yeah, thank you so much. I have learned a lot.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All
So
right.
like I mentioned, this will be we'll be sending the emails to everybody that registered. I've gotten a few emails from a few people saying, oh, they couldn't join, stuck in traffic, there's no power and whatnot. So we'll share the video and we'll share the slide as well on our platform, and you can just register and have access to it there. Yeah, but please make sure you follow us. Are you already following Division?
Yeah, I followed you guys, I think yesterday when I was just trying to see what you guys are all about. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, good. Thank you so much. It's been a fantastic time. We've gone over by maybe almost 10 minutes. But please look out for our next master class. It might not be on digital marketing. It might be on finance. It might be on human resource. But we will definitely be reaching out to you and to every other person that would eventually watch this video via email, right? Have a good evening, everyone, and thank you once again.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.